Swimming. Oh, electronic sports. I guess it depends, right? It depends on what you're trying to train for. I think the more specific that you are with the exact mechanical skill that you're trying to train, it makes sense to do some intervals. It's pretty common right now, at least with aim training, to do intervals of, I believe, like 15 to 20 minutes. It depends on the coach that is implementing the skills training. But yeah, I do feel like there is a benefit to implementing intervals within your training. When it comes down to actually playing the actual game, right? Like whether it be Fortnite, League, CS:GO, um, there's already intervals in itself, right? In the sense that you are playing a game and there's micro intervals and macro intervals when you have end of rounds or whenever you die or if you're queuing up for multiple games in a row. So it really depends, right? The answer is it depends, and it's always dependent on what specific skill or thing that you're trying to train. So yeah, great question though. Great question. Hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, please please clarify, because I'd love to help you answer it or get into more details about it. Ooh, dang, these are really good questions. So, do you think happiness blinds us, and having other more negative emotions gets us to better results? I think this can go into a lot of depth, right? And it also gets into what you mean by happiness, right? Because yeah, absolutely, if you are happy or content with your current state of how you've been performing in a game, then yeah, you might be tunnel vision and not look to improve. I don't think it's so much negative emotion. It's overall a little more self-awareness of what you're thinking and what your thought patterns are. That is a little more helpful. When it comes down to when you're actually in a team or individual game, whether it be Fortnite or League or CSGO, there is the factor of having other individuals that you have to coordinate with. And I guess even in Fortnite too, you have to coordinate with other individuals. So there will be situations where negative emotions will arise, whether you lose a situation or maybe your teammate doesn't do something well. And it's how you respond to that certain negative emotion, right? Because what typically happens for us in terms of emotion and thought is we have an initial response based on our own experience, and that will be anger, fear, frustration, and then the immediate thought that's associated with that is the thing that comes afterwards. And that by better understanding that entire process and also working to change that can help you be more productive with handling certain situations. So I know that sounds like a lot, but if I give you an example, if you were in Fortnite and you were at endgame and you maybe died during a rotation, maybe the immediate emotion that you'd feel is some frustration, and the immediate thoughts are maybe blaming something. Oh, I died because of this, or I died because that guy got lucky. Versus if you understood a little more about your emotions and saying that, hey, I know that I will immediately get frustrated, but instead I need to have a better overall awareness of what I'm trying to think about afterwards so that I can be more productive. When you take more responsibility in the things that you do, you are able to control more of these situations within the game. So if you died at the end game in terms of rotation, instead of blaming something or blaming the zone movement, you can say that, hey, I could have distracted my opponent by shooting at them so that they would be on the defense, and that would allow me to rotate a little more cleanly. So it's all about where you're focused on and the type of thought patterns that you have associated with emotions. It's not as black and white as, hey, if you're really happy, then it will blind you. It's more both. Hopefully that answered your question. In my perspective, I think that if you take responsibility for the controllable factors in a certain situation, that is better than blaming. I think regardless, that allows you to focus on things within all these situations within gaming or esports. It allows you to focus on the controllables. So the things that you are actively able to influence within a certain situation versus trying to work towards indirectly influencing a situation. So going back to that same example, it is all about understanding, hey, these are the things that I can do in this situation. It doesn't matter what other people are doing, or it doesn't matter that, hey, maybe zone pooled a certain way or a certain distance. You can only do so much with what you're given at the moment, and making the best or optimal decision in that situation to maximize risk, or to maximize your success and minimize your failure. So you're min-maxing, or essentially doing a risk reward at every potential situation. But taking responsibility for your actions will allow you to learn more quickly, because it's not a result of, hey, it's not my fault, so I don't have to change anything. It's, hey, it's my fault, I probably have to change something. And then developing the right system to address that is how you continually improve. Do you have an example of this question? Are you talking about like building practice or mechanical skills practice like in CSGO or even League, watching VODs? Because there's a lot of ways that we would address not so much procrastination, but the theory of compliance and buy-in. Right? If you understand the reason why you're doing something, and how it influences shorter and long-term results, then it might be overall better. I think systems planning versus reactive planning is definitely a better approach, right? Yeah, I think especially if you go into Warcraft 3. I used to play super long time ago, but I also played StarCraft back then, and for instance, it would be like, hey, if I am doing a Zerg rush, or hey, if I'm doing this, exactly, you need to do this, right? It's always a need versus want, right? Would you be doing if you weren't going to be practicing that? And it also depends on the overall context. Are you a professional? Are you amateur? What are you doing? And how important is it to you? Because if you're just playing casually and you do want to get better, but it's not really, there's no stakes, then it doesn't really matter. But if you do want to get better gradually over time, it's up to you to work to design something that's consistent for yourself, a training program, which is also why coaches are very helpful in this endeavor, right? You identify, these are the micro things and macro things I want to get better. Here's a really small step for myself that I know I can take every single day to work towards improving that. The more that you're able to define these small chunks or small steps to improve, the easier it is for you to make the commitment to want to do them. So it's always the systems approach versus being really reactive. And by reactive, I mean, hey, if I notice that I'm not as good as macro today, then I go ahead and train it. Versus I'm gonna just work on macro every single day, or I'm gonna work on micro every single day and know that it's gonna pay dividends. Awesome. Hopefully it's like a little more clear in the sense that you know what the first few steps would be, right? I think for most people, if I were to work with them, I kind of walk through or have them educate me on what the micro and macro components are to a game, and then really break it down into what I always reference as the first principles to things, the indivisible metrics or indivisible skills that you have to build up and get better at over time. And then how do we work to train those? So, I mean, for Warcraft, I'm not sure, right? Are there UMS or custom map settings where you could train specific things, right? Is there a UMS where you have to micro a specific character, a specific what do you call it, build, or not build, a specific, just like a character unit, that's what I'm trying to say, a specific unit, and then you become and develop the ability to control a single unit very well? Or is there a UMS setting, a UMS that allows you to do multiple units, right? Because whatever build that you want to work on, I'm sure some builds require more micro, some builds require less micro, and designing what would be your regular training program would be basically approaching it in that way. And I haven't played Warcraft in a long time though. I used to be really into it, but that's where I started, right? I started with Dota. I started with the original Dota. I am a fan. I have mixed feelings about goals. I think goals are definitely very helpful, and of course, right, there is the theory or the framework of using SMART goals and making them specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and with a time setting. I think that it can be very helpful, but again, let's say you set your goal, right, and you definitely have to create the appropriate plan that makes it easier for you to stay consistent. And a lot of the times, I think for most people, we create goals, we set it, and we forget it, and that's probably the most common thing I've seen. The best way is to keep, I think, a minimum amount of goals, 1 to 3, and then also look at it in terms of different time scales. You know, what are the 3-month goals that I want to achieve? What are the 5-month goals that I want to achieve? And you really do have to take some time and break it down. Okay, if I want to achieve X, how do I do that? And it's going to be a lot of thinking and planning, breaking it and down into the small steps that you have to work towards each day. I think the bigger picture is always, it just comes back down to the work that you have to put in each day that allows you to move forward very clearly toward your end goal. And it's helpful to have the end goal in mind to be aware of where you want to move. No way, come on. Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So like being able to balance a relationship with your goals to improve in gaming. I think that's a great question, because it's something that a lot of players that are pros are actually dealing with. And to a certain extent, it also depends. It depends on you, depends on what you're trying to achieve. So for a lot of girls that are dating professionals, they understand the lifestyle that's associated with it. And this is across all esports and traditional sports. There's a lot of time commitment, and they don't have the opportunity or chance to spend a lot of time or even think about their girlfriend, right? But on the flip side, if you're not as much of a professional there, and you do want to achieve certain things, I think it's up to you and how you communicate with your significant other on what you want to establish and what the time commitment is, right? Because in the end, if she knows that you're committing a certain amount of time, or whoever is important to you is committing a certain amount of time to improving at the game, and what the time commitment will be over an extended period of time, whether it be a week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, then it's not as much of a surprise for her. And if you openly communicate that with her, then and the expectations are set, then it makes it more difficult for someone to be unhappy. Because hey, let's say you talk to her and you say, hey, like, I really want to improve at gaming, it's just something that's important to me, and I think it's probably going to take X amount of time based on my planning for how I'm going to get better over X amount of months. Are you willing to, be patient, or are you willing to stay with me through this? Or are you willing to Yeah, you know, do you understand that it might take a little, I might be able to spend a little less time with you? And yeah, I mean, it's really just all about communication, how you work it through with your significant other on what you want to accomplish. I think that makes it, and that's really everything in a relationship, right? You just got to communicate your expectations, communicate what you want, compromise with her, him or her, and then move forward from there. Make a plan.